The discovery. Jack Miller never thought his weekend would turn into a nightmare. He had planned to renovate his basement, fix the old flooring, maybe even turn it into a small workshop. But now, standing in the dim basement with dust swirling around him, he stared at something impossible. It started with a simple mistake. Jack swung his hammer hard against the cracked concrete floor, expecting it to break apart like the rest. But instead of a dull thud, the hammer clanged against something metallic. The sound echoed through the basement, sharp and unnatural. Jack frowned. That wasn't right. He knelt down, brushing away the dust. Beneath the broken concrete, he saw it. A smooth metal surface, dark and cold. His heart pounded as he ran his fingers over it. It wasn't rusted like an old pipe, and it wasn't the kind of metal you'd expect under a house. It was too perfect. Jack grabbed his tools and started digging, breaking apart more of the floor. His hands moved faster, driven by curiosity and a strange sense of unease. What was buried here? The more he uncovered, the bigger it became. The metal wasn't just a pipe or an old machine. It was a pod. A large, oval-shaped pod sat beneath his basement floor, covered in dust, but strangely intact. Glowing blue lines ran along its surface, pulsing softly like a heartbeat. Jack took a step back. His breath came fast. This can't be real," he whispered. His mind raced. Was it military? Some kind of secret experiment? No, that didn't make sense. His house was old, built decades ago. If this pod had been buried here all this time, then who put it here? And more importantly, what was inside? Jack's hands trembled as he brushed away more dirt. The pod gave a soft hiss. He froze. Then it moved. The top of the pod slid open, releasing a cloud of cold white mist. Jack stumbled back, heart hammering against his ribs. Through the fog, something shifted inside. A figure. The mist cleared slowly, revealing a woman lying inside. She wasn't human. Her skin was pale blue, smooth like porcelain. Long silver hair cascaded around her shoulders, and her face was delicate, almost unreal. Her eyes were closed, her chest rising and falling gently, as if she were simply asleep. Jack's brain screamed at him to run. This was not normal. He should call someone. The police, the government, anyone. But his feet stayed rooted in place. He couldn't look away. Suddenly, her eyes snapped open. Jack gasped. Her eyes were silver, glowing softly in the dim light. She stared at him, unmoving. Jack lifted his hand slowly, trying to show he meant no harm. "Hey, can you hear me?" His voice was barely above a whisper. The woman blinked. Her gaze darted around the basement, then back to him. Then, before Jack could react, she gasped, a sharp, desperate sound. She sat up fast, her body trembling. Her breath came in quick, ragged bursts. She looked at him again, but this time, fear flashed across her face. "No," she whispered. "No, they found me." Jack's stomach twisted. Who was looking for her? The pod beeped. A small red light blinked on the side. A warning. A signal. Jack didn't know, but a bad feeling crawled up his spine. The woman reached out suddenly, grabbing his wrist. Her grip was strong, almost painful. "They will come," she said, her voice urgent. Her fingers tightened. "We need to leave. Now." Jack swallowed hard. His basement, his normal, boring basement, had just turned into something out of a science fiction movie. He had so many questions. But outside, something moved. A deep, vibrating hum filled the air. Jack's head snapped toward the basement window. Through the small, dusty glass, he saw something that made his blood turn to ice. A black drone hovered outside, a single red light blinking beneath it. Watching. The woman's grip on his wrist tightened. Her silver eyes locked onto his. "They're already here," she whispered. Jack's heart pounded. He had no idea what was happening. But one thing was clear. This was no longer his decision. Something bigger had just begun. She wakes up. Jack's breath came fast, his heartbeat slamming against his ribs. The woman's grip on his wrist was strong, too strong for someone who had just woken up from what looked like years of sleep. Her silver eyes darted to the basement window, where the black drone hovered, its red light blinking ominously. Jack swallowed hard. His mind screamed at him to do something. But what? Run? Hide? Call the police? The woman exhaled sharply, her fingers still wrapped around his wrist. "We don't have time," she said. Her voice was smooth, but carried a sharp edge of urgency. Jack stared at her. "Who are you?" he whispered. "What is this thing? What's happening?" The drone outside let out a mechanical whir, shifting slightly. Jack felt like it was staring directly at him. The woman turned to him. "I'll explain later. But first, you need to choose. Do you want to live?" Jack didn't even have time to think before the basement door burst open. A flood of heavy boots thumped against the wooden stairs. Shadows filled the doorway, and suddenly, 3 men in black tactical gear stormed in, guns raised. Their faces were hidden behind helmets, but their movements were fast, professional. Not normal police. Not normal at all. "Step away from the asset." One of them barked, his rifle aimed directly at Jack's chest. Jack froze. "The what?" "The asset," the man repeated, taking a step closer. His finger hovered over the trigger. "Step back now." Jack felt his pulse pounding in his ears. His mouth went dry. Every instinct told him to comply, to let them take her, to get out of this insane mess before it got worse. But then, the woman moved. Faster than Jack's eyes could follow, she jerked her arm upward. A pulse of blue energy exploded from her palm, slamming into the first soldier's chest. The man flew backward, smashing into the concrete wall so hard that cracks spread outward from the impact. His rifle clattered to the ground. The other 2 didn't hesitate. They opened fire. Pop, pop, pop. Muzzle flashes lit up the basement in bursts of bright orange. Jack ducked, covering his head as bullets tore into the wooden beams above. The woman didn't even flinch. She threw up her hands, and a shimmering blue shield snapped into place around her. The bullets struck it and vanished, absorbed into the strange energy. One of the soldiers shouted something into his radio. "The target is awake. I repeat, the target is awake. We need backup now." The woman turned to Jack. "Move." Jack didn't need to be told twice. He scrambled to his feet, his boots slipping on the dust-covered floor. The woman lunged at the second soldier, grabbing him by the wrist. With shocking ease, she twisted. There was a sickening snap, and the man collapsed, his gun falling uselessly to the ground. The third soldier tried to run. He almost made it. The woman lifted her hand, and a pulse of blue light shot from her fingers, striking him between the shoulder blades. The man stiffened, then dropped, unconscious before he even hit the ground. Jack stood there, his chest rising and falling, staring. She turned to him, brushing silver hair from her face. "We need to go. More will come." Jack swallowed, his mind reeling. His basement was destroyed. Bullet holes in the walls, dust hanging in the air, 3 unconscious, or maybe dead, soldiers lying at his feet. "What the hell is going on?" he demanded. The woman took a step closer. "My name is Lyra," she said. "I've been asleep for a long time. Too long." Jack exhaled. "Yeah, I got that part." He pointed at the men on the ground. "Who are these guys? Why are they after you?" Lyra glanced at the fallen soldiers, then at the still hovering drone outside the window. "Because I know something they don't want you to know." Jack ran a shaky hand through his hair. He wanted to wake up from this. He wanted this to be some bizarre dream. But the bodies on the floor and the smell of gunpowder in the air told him otherwise. Lyra turned toward the stairs. "We have to leave before reinforcements arrive." Jack hesitated. "Where are we even supposed to go?" Lyra met his gaze, her silver eyes unreadable. "There's only one place left," she said. "And if we don't get there first, we're dead." Then she started up the stairs. Jack glanced around his ruined basement one last time. A few hours ago, his biggest problem was fixing the floor. Now he was running for his life with an alien fugitive. Taking a deep breath, he followed her into the unknown. The chase begins. Jack barely had time to process what had just happened. One moment, he was breaking his basement floor for renovations. The next, he was standing over 3 unconscious soldiers, following a glowing-eyed alien woman up his own stairs. His world had shifted, and there was no turning back. Lyra moved fast. She barely made a sound as she reached the top of the stairs and peeked around the corner. Jack, on the other hand, stumbled forward, his breath still shaky. "Wait, wait, wait," he hissed, grabbing her arm. "We can't just run out of here. My truck is parked right out front. They'll see us the second we step outside." Lyra looked at him, eyes sharp and calculating. They already know where we are. The longer we wait, the less chance we have. Jack clenched his jaw. She was right, but that didn't make this any less insane. Outside, the distant rumble of engines sent ice through his veins. He peered through a crack in the blinds. His house, which had always been quiet and isolated, now looked like the middle of a war zone. 3 black SUVs skidded to a stop in his driveway. Their doors flew open, and more armed soldiers poured out, their rifles raised. The black drone that had been hovering outside his basement window zipped higher, circling like a mechanical vulture. Jack's heart slammed against his ribs. "Yeah, that's bad." Lyra pressed a hand against the wall, closing her eyes for a brief moment. The faint blue glow of her skin pulsed, and suddenly, the house hummed like something deep inside was waking up. "What are you doing?" Jack whispered, feeling the hairs on his arms stand up. Lyra exhaled, opening her eyes again. "Setting a distraction." Before Jack could ask what that meant, the kitchen lights exploded. A shockwave rippled through the house, making every window shatter outward. The air filled with a sharp electric buzz, and for a split second, the entire neighborhood's power cut out. Every streetlight, every house, total darkness. Then, the soldiers outside panicked. Shouts rang out. Their radios crackled with static. One of the SUV's alarms blared randomly. Jack watched in stunned silence as 2 soldiers fired blindly into the air, spooked by something unseen. Lyra grabbed his wrist. Now. They bolted for the back door. Jack barely kept up as Lyra yanked the door open and sprinted outside, her silver hair flashing in the moonlight. Jack followed, his boots crunching on the gravel path behind his house. They had seconds before the soldiers regrouped. "Where are we going?" Jack hissed as he stumbled after her. "The truck," she said simply. "That's what I just said was a bad idea." Lyra didn't slow down. "Now it's our best one." Behind them, the soldiers were recovering fast. They're on the move." Someone shouted. A rifle cracked, and something whizzed past Jack's head so close he felt the heat of it. Jack's instincts took over. He sprinted toward his truck, fumbling for his keys. Come on." His hands were slick with sweat, shaking. Lyra slammed her palm against the truck's passenger door. The entire vehicle hummed and unlocked instantly. Jack didn't even question it. He dove into the driver's seat, turning the ignition. The engine roared to life just as Lyra slid in beside him. A red targeting laser danced across the windshield. "Drive," Lyra said, her voice deathly calm. Jack didn't need to be told twice. He slammed his foot on the gas. The truck lurched forward, tires kicking up gravel as they sped down the narrow dirt road leading away from his house. The soldiers weren't far behind. One of the black SUVs peeled out after them, its headlights cutting through the darkness like twin spotlights. The drone overhead zoomed forward, keeping pace with them, its red light blinking rapidly. Jack gritted his teeth. They're catching up. Lyra placed a hand against the dashboard. The truck shuddered, and suddenly, the speedometer jumped, as if something had just given the engine a shot of adrenaline. Jack's truck had never been particularly fast. It was old, rusty, and unreliable. But right now, it felt like a rocket. "What the hell did you just do?" Jack shouted over the roar of the engine. "I rewrote the fuel efficiency," Lyra said, gripping the door handle as the truck bounced over rough terrain, "and gave it a little extra boost." Jack had no idea what that meant. He also did not care. The SUV behind them gained speed, its high beams blinding in the rearview mirror. Then, bang! Jack flinched as something hit the truck's back bumper, nearly making him lose control. "They're trying to ram us." Lyra's eyes flicked to the side mirror. She exhaled sharply, then lifted one hand and made a twisting motion in the air. Behind them, the SUV's engine sputtered violently. The entire vehicle jerked sideways, its tires locking up. The driver fought for control, but it was too late. The SUV veered off the road, its tires skidding across the wet grass before slamming into a tree with a deafening crunch. Jack stared at her, mouth open. "Did you just—" "They're still coming," Lyra interrupted. Jack cursed under his breath. He was already pushing the truck to its limits, and yet more headlights appeared in the distance. "There's a safe house," Lyra said. "If we can get there, we can hide." Jack glanced at her. "How do you know that?" She hesitated. "Because I left something there. Something important." Jack wanted to ask more, but right now he had only one job: drive like hell. The night was far from over, and something told him this was only the beginning. Escape and truth. The truck barreled down the highway, engine roaring as Jack pushed it harder than he ever had before. The speedometer was past its normal limit, but the old vehicle didn't stutter. It surged forward, as if fueled by something beyond simple gasoline. Jack gripped the wheel tightly, his knuckles white. He risked a glance at Lyra, who sat beside him, her silver eyes glowing faintly in the dark. She was focused, her breathing steady, but her fingers twitched against her thighs. She was tense. Behind them, in the distance, the glow of headlights flickered. Jack exhaled. "They're still following us. They won't stop," Lyra said softly. "Not until we're either captured or dead." Jack let out a bitter laugh. "Well, that's just great." The road ahead stretched into the darkness, winding through thick forests and rolling hills. Jack knew these roads well. He had lived in this town his whole life. But now, it felt different. His home had turned into a battlefield, and he was running from an enemy he didn't even understand. He stole another glance at Lyra. Her glowing eyes flickered toward him. "You have questions." Jack scoffed. "You think." He took a sharp turn, the tires screeching on the asphalt. "I just found a freaking alien in my basement, got shot at by guys in Black Ops gear, and now I'm on the run from God knows who. Yeah, I have questions." Lyra remained silent for a moment. Then she sighed. "You deserve answers," she admitted, "but I don't know if you're ready to hear them." Jack gritted his teeth. "Try me." Lyra hesitated, then finally spoke. "My people came to Earth a long time ago," she began. "We weren't invaders. We weren't conquerors. We were refugees." Jack frowned. "Refugees? From what?" Lyra's gaze darkened. "A war. One that started long before your species even knew what space was." Jack's grip tightened on the wheel. "A war with who?" She inhaled sharply. "The Dominion." A chill ran down Jack's spine, something about the way she said it. Asterisk, asterisk, the weight of it. Asterisk, asterisk, made his stomach churn. "The Dominion was an empire," Lyra continued. "A vast, ruthless force that conquered entire worlds, enslaving those they saw as lesser. My people, the Seraphim, were one of the few who dared to resist them." Jack listened in stunned silence. "We fought," she said, her voice growing softer. "For centuries, we fought. But the Dominion was too strong. One by one, our homeworlds fell." Jack swallowed. "So, you ran?" Lyra nodded. Some of us did. A few Seraphim ships escaped. We scattered across the galaxy, hiding where we could. Earth was one of the places we chose. Jack's mind raced. Wait, you're telling me aliens have been living on Earth this whole time? Lyra gave a sad smile. Not just my kind. Others too. Earth is unique, a forgotten world, hidden from the greater galaxy. It was the perfect place to disappear. Jack exhaled slowly, his thoughts spiraling. So what happened to you? Lyra looked out the window, her expression unreadable. The Dominion never stops hunting. They sent agents to track us, even here, but they weren't the only ones. Jack frowned. The guys in black. That wasn't the Dominion. Lyra shook her head. No, those were humans. Jack felt a pit form in his stomach. The government found out about us, she said. Not all of them, just a few powerful men in the shadows. They wanted to study us, to use our technology, our DNA. She shuddered. When they found me, I was taken, locked away in a facility. They experimented on me. Jack felt a surge of anger. That's why you were in that pod. Lyra nodded. I was supposed to be transported to another location, but something happened. I don't know what. All I remember is being put to sleep and then waking up in your basement. Jack let out a slow breath. He didn't know what to say. This was insane. But somehow, deep in his gut, he knew she wasn't lying. The headlights behind them grew brighter. The SUVs were getting closer. Jack clenched his jaw. Okay, let's say I believe all of this. What now? Where are we going? Lyra straightened. There's a safe house, a hidden bunker built by the Seraphim who came before me. It has technology that can help us. Jack's hands tightened on the wheel. And what happens when we get there? Lyra hesitated. I don't know, she admitted. But I do know one thing. Jack looked at her. She met his gaze, her silver eyes glowing softly in the dark. We can't run forever. Jack exhaled sharply. His whole world had just been turned upside down. But one thing was clear. There was no going back. The road stretched ahead, dark and uncertain. And behind them, the enemy was closing in. A hidden past. Jack's truck tore down the winding back roads, its headlights cutting through the thick darkness. The tires skidded slightly on the damp asphalt, but Jack kept control, his focus razor-sharp. The SUVs behind them weren't giving up. 3 sets of blinding headlights loomed closer, engines roaring, closing the distance fast. Lyra sat rigid in the passenger seat, her glowing silver eyes darting between the side mirror and the road ahead. They're gaining, she said, her voice tight. Jack gritted his teeth. Yeah, I noticed. Lyra pressed her palm against the dashboard again. A faint pulse of blue light spread through the truck. And once more, Jack felt the vehicle lurch forward, faster than should have been possible. The engine hummed with an unnatural energy. Still haven't gotten used to that, Jack muttered. Lyra didn't respond. Her eyes were locked ahead now, scanning the road as if searching for something. Jack followed her gaze, but all he saw were trees and darkness. Then, suddenly, turn left. Now, Lyra barked. Jack barely hesitated. He yanked the wheel, and the truck veered sharply onto a barely visible dirt road, hidden between dense trees. The truck bounced wildly over the uneven path, branches scraping against the sides. Behind them, the SUVs screeched to a stop. Jack caught a glimpse of headlights swerving, engines roaring in frustration. They had overshot the turn. He let out a shaky breath. That won't stop them for long. It doesn't have to, Lyra said. We're close. Jack gripped the wheel tighter. Close to what? She didn't answer. The road twisted and turned, leading them deeper into the forest. The further they drove, the thicker the trees became. Eventually, the dirt road disappeared entirely beneath the overgrowth, leaving only a tunnel of shadows and moonlight. Jack felt a strange tension in the air, as if the forest itself was watching. Okay, he said, voice lower now. You want to tell me where we're going? Lyra exhaled slowly. A long time ago, she began, before humans built cities, before history was written. My people were here. Jack frowned. You mean, like thousands of years ago? Lyra nodded. We came here, hiding from the Dominion. Some of us built places of safety, shelters, bunkers. We called them sanctuaries. Jack's pulse quickened. And that's where we're headed. Yes, Lyra confirmed. One of the last remaining ones. It's hidden, only accessible to those who know how to find it. Jack glanced around. The trees seemed denser than before, the air heavier, charged with an invisible energy. And you're sure it's still functioning? Lyra hesitated. I don't know, she admitted. No one has been here for centuries, maybe longer. Jack exhaled sharply. Great. Then, just as the thought crossed his mind, the road ended. The truck skidded to a stop. In front of them stood an ancient stone wall, covered in moss and vines. It was massive, stretching high into the trees. In the center of the wall, almost hidden by nature's overgrowth, was a set of symbols etched into the stone. Glowing faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. Lyra stared at it, her breath hitching. It's real, she whispered. Jack raised an eyebrow. You weren't sure before. Lyra didn't respond. Instead, she stepped out of the truck and approached the wall, her fingers tracing the ancient symbols. The second she touched them, the air around them shifted. The symbols flared to life, bright and blue. The earth trembled beneath their feet, and the moss covering the wall peeled away, revealing what had been hidden for ages, a massive metal door, seamlessly embedded into the stone. Jack stared, his brain struggling to keep up. Okay, that's definitely not normal. Lyra pressed her palm against the center of the door. The ground rumbled. The door split open, revealing a dark passage leading underground. Cold, stale air rushed out, carrying the scent of time itself, old metal, forgotten secrets, and something else, something that made Jack's skin crawl. Lyra turned to him. This is it, she said. The sanctuary. Jack swallowed hard. He didn't know what was worse, the fact that they had found a secret alien bunker in the middle of nowhere, or the feeling in his gut that something was waiting for them inside. All right, he muttered. Let's go before our friends catch up. Lyra nodded and stepped into the darkness. Jack took a deep breath and followed. As soon as they crossed the threshold, the doors sealed shut behind them. Inside the sanctuary, the tunnel stretched deep underground, carved from smooth metallic stone that seemed to absorb the light. As they walked, dim blue glyphs flickered to life along the walls, their glow illuminating the path. Jack ran a hand along the cold surface. This doesn't feel like normal rock. Lyra nodded. It's not. This entire structure was made from seraphim technology. Jack frowned. So, how does it still have power? Lyra didn't answer right away. She seemed deep in thought, her glowing eyes scanning every inch of the tunnel. The technology we used, it wasn't just metal and circuits. It was something more. Jack narrowed his eyes. Magic. Lyra let out a quiet laugh. Not magic, but something humans wouldn't understand yet. We designed our sanctuaries to last, but even I don't know what we'll find inside. Jack sighed. Great. Love the confidence. After several minutes of walking, they reached a massive chamber. Jack's breath caught. The room was enormous, stretching out like an ancient cathedral, filled with strange, floating orbs of light. And in the center of it all, a massive console sat on a raised platform, covered in glowing blue panels and swirling holograms. Lyra's steps slowed. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached out and touched the console. The moment her fingers made contact, the entire sanctuary came to life. Lights flooded the room, flickering in long-dormant patterns. The air vibrated with energy. Jack took a step back. Ugh, what did you just do? Lyra's expression shifted, from awe to something else. She turned to Jack, her face unreadable. "The truth," she whispered, "the real truth about Earth is in here." Jack's pulse spiked, and then, from the depths of the sanctuary, something stirred. The final battle. The sanctuary hummed with life, ancient systems flickering back online after centuries of silence. The air crackled with energy, the walls pulsing as if the entire structure were waking from a deep slumber. Jack stood frozen, his breath heavy as he stared at the console Lyra had just activated. Then he heard it. A low, deep vibration. Not mechanical, but something else. Something alive. From the far end of the chamber, beyond the glowing orbs of floating light, something moved. Jack's instincts screamed at him to run, but his feet refused to obey. His eyes darted toward Lyra, who stood in front of the console, her silver eyes wide with shock. She hadn't expected this. What is that?" Jack whispered. Lyra swallowed. "Something I hoped was long gone." The shadows shifted, and out of the darkness, a figure emerged. It was tall, unnaturally tall, its form wrapped in a black, rippling material that seemed to bend light around it. Its arms were long and clawed, its head smooth and featureless, except for two burning red eyes. Jack's blood turned to ice. "I thought this place was a sanctuary," he hissed, "not a freaking haunted house." Lyra's breath was shaky. "It is, but not just for us." The creature took a slow, deliberate step forward. Its body rippled, like a shifting shadow. And then, it spoke. "Seraphim," it growled, its voice inhuman, like a whisper woven through metal. "You have awakened what should remain buried." Jack instinctively took a step back. "Okay, that's enough sci-fi horror for today. Let's leave before this thing decides to eat us." Lyra didn't move. She kept her gaze locked on the creature. "This is impossible," she murmured. The wraiths were destroyed. The thing, the wraith, tilted its head, those burning red eyes locking onto her. "Destroyed?" it repeated. "No, Seraphim, you merely forgot." The moment those words left its mouth, the sanctuary shook violently. Jack grabbed onto the console for balance. What the hell is happening? Lyra's hands clenched into fists. This place, it wasn't just a hideout. It was a prison. Jack's stomach twisted. A prison. For that. Before Lyra could answer, the wraith lunged. Jack barely had time to react before Lyra threw up her hands. A burst of blue energy slammed into the creature, sending it skidding back into the shadows. The walls shuddered, the floating orbs flickering wildly. "Run," Lyra shouted. Jack didn't argue. He turned and bolted, his boots slamming against the metal floor as he sprinted toward the exit. But before he could reach it, the sanctuary doors slammed shut, trapping them inside. A deep, eerie chuckle echoed through the chamber. "You cannot run," the wraith whispered. "You never could." Jack's breath was ragged. "Oh, that's just fantastic. The evil shadow monster locks the door. I hate this day." Lyra's hands glowed brighter, her expression set in grim determination. "If we don't stop it here, it will escape." Jack's heart pounded. "I'm assuming that's a bad thing." Lyra's gaze hardened. "If it gets out, it won't just kill us, it will call the Dominion. And once they know I'm alive, they'll come for Earth." Jack swore under his breath. He had no idea what was worse. The soldiers chasing them, the fact that Earth wasn't alone in the universe, or the idea that a galactic empire might be coming to wipe them all out. The wraith shifted, its form twisting as it prepared to strike again. Jack clenched his fists. "All right. How do we kill it?" Lyra hesitated. "We don't." Jack blinked. "Come again." Lyra exhaled sharply. "Wraiths aren't like normal beings. They aren't made of flesh and blood. They are pure energy, drawn from the void between dimensions. You don't kill them. You contain them." Jack groaned. "Well, that's just perfect. You got a container lying around." Lyra's gaze flicked to the console. "No, But I have an idea. She suddenly bolted toward the wraith. Jack's eyes widened. Wait, Lyra, what are you? Before he could stop her, Lyra threw herself at the creature, her hands blazing with raw energy. The wraith roared, but Lyra pushed through, slamming her palms against its shifting form. The moment her hands made contact, the entire sanctuary exploded with light. Jack stumbled back, shielding his eyes as the energy whipped around them. The walls pulsed, the floor trembled, and the console's symbols flared to life. The wraith screamed. Lyra's voice rang out, her words sharp and commanding. I am Seraphim, guardian of the last light. Be gone. The wraith shattered. A blinding wave of blue energy erupted outward, slamming into the walls, sealing the cracks, restoring the ancient power of the sanctuary. The creature's form broke apart, its red eyes vanishing into nothingness. Then, silence. Jack panted, lowering his arms. The chamber was still again. The air was heavy, charged with electricity. And in the center of it all, Lyra collapsed. Jack's heart lurched. Hey, are you? He ran to her side, kneeling next to her. Her breathing was shallow, her skin paler than before. Her silver eyes fluttered open, filled with exhaustion. It's done, she whispered. Jack exhaled shakily. You could have warned me before doing something insane. Lyra gave a faint smile. Would you have let me? Jack opened his mouth, then closed it. Fair point. A deep rumbling suddenly echoed through the sanctuary. Jack's eyes snapped toward the console. Symbols flashed rapidly. The screens flickered, displaying something new. A message. Not in English. Not in any language Jack had ever seen. But somehow, he understood it. Warning. Dominion SIGNAL DTTTTD. Fleet inbound. Jack's blood ran cold. He looked at Lyra. Her expression darkened. They know. Jack swallowed hard. So what now? Lyra pushed herself up, wincing slightly, but her eyes burned with new determination. Now, she said, we get ready for war. Jack sighed. I was afraid you'd say that. He looked back at the screen. At the warning of an incoming fleet, his old life was over. Earth was no longer hidden. And for the first time, Jack realized humanity had just been thrown into the middle of a war it wasn't ready for. A new beginning. The sanctuary's walls still hummed with energy, the residual shockwaves from Lyra's battle with the wraith slowly fading into eerie silence. The air smelled of charged particles, ancient dust, and something new. A shift. A change. Jack's fingers clenched into fists as he stared at the glowing symbols on the ancient console. Warning. Dominion SIDN DKKTE. Fleet inbound. Each pulse of light felt like a countdown, a promise of destruction. Jack exhaled sharply. So, let me get this straight. The bad guys who wiped out your people just got our location. Lyra, still breathing heavily from the battle, nodded. Yes. Jack ran a hand through his hair. And now an alien armada is coming to kill us. Not just us, Lyra said softly. If they find Earth, they will take it. Jack's stomach twisted. And by take it, I'm guessing you don't mean they'll be passing out welcome baskets. Lyra's glowing eyes darkened. They will enslave or destroy your people. Jack's heart pounded. He turned toward the ancient console, as if somehow it would suddenly display a press here to save Earth button. But there was nothing. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Jack took a deep breath and straightened. All right. Then we fight. Lyra blinked, taken aback. Fight. Jack looked at her, determination solidifying in his chest like iron. You said Earth was unique. That's why your people hid here. Maybe they thought we weren't ready to know the truth. He glanced back at the message flashing on the console. But guess what? Now we don't have a choice. Lyra studied him for a long moment. You're not afraid." Jack let out a small, humorless laugh. "Oh, I'm terrified. But fear doesn't change what's coming." He clenched his fists. If they're coming for Earth, then Earth fights back. Lyra exhaled slowly. "You don't understand. Your people have never fought something like the Dominion. Their weapons, their armies, their technology. It is beyond anything you can imagine." Jack met her gaze, something fierce burning behind his eyes. "Then they've never fought humans before." A silence stretched between them, charged with something neither of them could explain. Then Lyra smiled. It was small, almost hesitant, but real. "Perhaps you are more like my people than I thought." Jack smirked. "Well, let's hope your people were really good at kicking alien ass." Lyra turned back to the console, placing her palm against the glowing interface. Symbols shifted, data streamed across the screen. The sanctuary's systems fully awakening. Jack took a cautious step forward. "What are you doing?" Lyra's expression turned serious. "Preparing." The walls of the chamber began to move, sections of metal shifting and pulling apart to reveal hidden compartments. Weapons, armor, technology beyond human comprehension. Jack's mouth dropped open. "Whoa." Lyra ran her fingers over a sleek, metallic gauntlet, its surface glowing with intricate blue lines. "If Earth is to fight, it will need more than bravery." She tossed the gauntlet to Jack. He barely caught it. "And what exactly is this?" Lyra gave him a knowing smile. "Try it on." Jack hesitated, then slipped his hand into the gauntlet. The second his fingers connected with the inner surface, a shockwave of energy coursed through his body. His veins felt like they were on fire, but not in pain, in power. The metal shifted, crawling up his arm like liquid armor, wrapping around his wrist and forearm. The glowing blue lines pulsed with life. Jack gasped. "What the hell?" Lyra stepped closer. "That is Seraphim technology, designed for battle. It will adapt to you, enhance you." Jack flexed his fingers. The gauntlet responded instantly, glowing brighter as if connected to his thoughts. He took a shaky breath. "This is insane." Lyra smirked. "Now you are ready." Jack turned to her. "So what's the plan? How do we stop an entire alien fleet?" Lyra tapped the console. A holographic map appeared, displaying the solar system. A massive red marker flickered near the edge of Earth's orbit. Jack pointed. "That them?" Lyra nodded. "They are not here yet, but their ships are already scanning the system." Her expression turned grave. "We don't have much time." Jack rolled his shoulders, the gauntlet humming in sync with his pulse. "Then we don't waste it." The final stand. Lyra and Jack worked fast. The sanctuary's storage revealed more than just weapons. It held ships, armor, technology beyond human history. Jack found himself suiting up, slipping into Seraphim battle armor, feeling its weight settle around him like a second skin. He felt faster, stronger, more alive. Lyra prepped the ship, a sleek, dark vessel hidden deep within the sanctuary. It hummed with power, its design far beyond anything humans had ever built. Jack ran a hand along its side. "You sure this thing flies?" Lyra smirked. "I hope so." The ground shook. A deep, resonating hum filled the chamber. Something big had just entered Earth's orbit. Lyra's eyes widened. "They're here." Jack inhaled sharply. His stomach twisted with anticipation, fear, and something else. Excitement. He turned to Lyra. "Then let's give them a welcome they'll never forget." They boarded the ship, engines roaring to life as the hangar doors peeled open above them. The moment they lifted off, Jack saw it. Above the Earth's atmosphere, massive warships loomed, sleek and dark, their surfaces covered in pulsing red energy. The Dominion had arrived. Jack's breath hitched. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a hero. He was just a guy who had found an alien in his basement. And yet, here he was, fighting for Earth, fighting for humanity, fighting for something bigger than himself. Lyra's voice cut through the comms. "Jack." He turned to see her staring at him, her silver eyes filled with something he hadn't seen before. Hope. "We can do this," she said. Jack grinned, his heart pounding. "Hell yeah, we can." The ship's engines ignited, and they shot toward the stars, toward the battle that would decide the fate of Earth. This wasn't just survival anymore. This was war.